So here we are at the latest episode of Geek Bites Back, and I'm with a very special guest, someone I've been wanting to talk to for a very long time, Mr. Liam O'Brien. Some of you might know him as Guerra, some of you might know his voice as War from Darksiders, and he's also been in Bleach and many countless games. So Liam, welcome to the Geek Bites Back.
Graham, thank you so much for having me, and thanks to anyone who's listening right now. I really appreciate it.
So, Liam, you've been at this a while now. Do you remember? Did you always want to act? Was it a thing from the get-go? Like, I know I ask a lot of people, Steve Blum, Miley. Did you want to always be an actor, or was there another kind of avenue for you?
No, not always. Some people know from when they're little children. I was a teenager before I figured it out. I think when I was a little kid, I thought I was going to be a veterinarian. I think I really liked animals. And then when I got into high school and started, I thought, well, I'm good at English class and literature. Maybe I'll become an English teacher. And then I wasn't a very athletic kid, and somebody tried to talk me into trying out for a school play in high school, and I did. And I just liked the people I was hanging out with, and that was my entry point for it. But then quickly started getting bigger roles and fell in love with it, and went to school to study as an actor. And when I was in my early 20s, I just wanted to be a serious theater actor. I didn't think. I was playing games, and I was watching. I loved Akira and Ghost in the Shell, and I grew up on Voltron and He-Man. I loved those things, but it didn't really occur to me that I could do that. And so I plunked around doing theater in America, both in New York and around in what are called regional theaters here. That means professional theaters in different states of America. And I did a play with a guy who'd been doing anime for a couple of years, and he just hooked me up with an audition, and I booked it, and everything has been a little, started as a pebble and it slowly rolled into a giant boulder 15 years later. And I don't do theater as much anymore. I miss it, but I love the work that I've gotten into so much that I have no complaints.
And do you find now with all the roles and everything that you're getting offered, would you have time? If you had the time, would you like to go back? Like, is it mainly time constraints that you have now with all the roles that you get?
Yeah, well, it's a couple of things, I guess. It's definitely time because I work a lot. It's financial as well, and as much as I dearly love theater, it doesn't really, I guess, go toe-to-toe financially with the kind of work I do. And then also the kinds of work I do it's so different every week, and I never know if I'm going to be yelling "Grenade, get down!" or just being relaxed as Guerra in the Sand Village. And if I were to do a play, I'd kind of have to put a stop to any kind of rough vocal work, which normally I'm fine to do. But if I have to project to the back row in a theater every day of the week, or 6 of the 7 days a week, then I couldn't be yelling, reloading. But I'd like to, and I mean to. And luckily, performance capture is becoming so prevalent.
Yes.
I've started to get my feet wet with that. It's scratching the same itch, or many of the same itches. You don't get the live performing in front of a live audience, which is a little bit like surfing. You ride on the wave of the crowd's energy. So that's not there. But the performance capture is pretty darn close to theatrical performance, and so I've been loving the chances I've had to do that for the game industry.
And what projects in the gaming industry have you had a chance to actually perform motion capture? Would there be any ones in particular that we might know?
Yeah, the first thing I ever did was Devil May Cry 4. That was years back now, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Losing track. But I traveled to Tokyo for it. I was there for a couple weeks. Loved that, and came back here. And then, I've been really involved with the Resident Evil series, both as an actor, but also as their voice director on several games, but especially on 5 and on 6. And I was sort of like an English acting guru for the Japanese team on 6, so I was on the performance capture stage a lot, although I wasn't performing much in that. I did do one of their disgusting creatures for them a couple of days on that shoot. And then I'm really starting to get into it now. So it was a slow drip for me because the thing about me is I play all kinds of characters, but I don't look like a hunky hero in person. I'm all right. But that factors into casting. You know, even if they say, "Oh, we just want performance."
Does it really? It actually factors into casting. How they cast you as like you play as Angel, you play as Guerra, you play as War. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, they also usually want an actor who's close to the sort of physique of the character they have, and I'm not big and bulky.
No, well, I don't think anyone could be War, to be fair.
Right. They would not have cast me to do his movement. But this year has been good. I can't talk about much. The only thing that I can talk about, and it may be my favorite job I've ever booked, is I did all the performance capture and voice work and the everything for Gollum in Shadow of Mordor that's coming out.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, and what was that like?
A dream come true. I mean, I've been in love with Tolkien and his books since I was a little kid, and I was obsessed with an animated version of The Hobbit when I was younger. It was a joint, I only know this now, I didn't back then, but it was a joint Japanese and French venture, I believe, but I was obsessed with Gollum in that, even as a kid, and then I loved the movies, Serkis's performance, and the animators' work, you know, hitting that character just moved me deeply. Loved those movies, still love those movies, and it's not the first project I've ever done the voice for Gollum, but it's the greatest project. It's the sort of biggest workload, and none of them had performance capture, so it was surreal to sort of follow in Andy Serkis's footsteps and borrow the vehicle that he and the animators created on those movies.
And did you have to? Yeah. And did you have to watch him? Did you have to watch how he acted as Gollum? Did you have to watch much of his physicality to get the character down, or was that? Did you decide this is my interpretation of Gollum?
No, they wanted to have continuity with the films. And I didn't need to rewatch Gollum. I've seen those movies, you know, at least 6 times each. And I've been playing with that voice for years, but I thought, this is a parlor trick. I'll never need to use this. And lo and behold, they finally, because I thought, you know, they're not going to recreate the movies in a game, I don't think. And it's already been established, so maybe I'll get to, and I have played elves and an eagle at one point in other Lord of the Rings based games, but suddenly this little trick I could do turned into a lot more.
Yeah, it seems very much like that. So you were talking about, you mentioned there one of your most famous characters, Guerra. What's it been like now? Did you think when you first got that role that you'd still be here so many years later playing that character and watching him grow?
No, I really didn't. It's the longest I've ever worked on anything. I knew he was the character that I wanted to book, and I booked him, which almost never, ever happens.
Wow.
Normally you're like, this is the guy for me, and then you either don't get cast or you get cast as something completely different. The only other time I can think of was Nightcrawler. I wanted to book Nightcrawler for Wolverine and the X-Men, and I did.
And you got Angel as well.
Yeah, I was Nightcrawler and Angel for that series.
So,
but Guerra, I've been doing him for, I think, 8 years now, or maybe I can't remember how many years, but it's over 400, I've lost track of the number. There have been about 40 games.
Yes.
Every game they're all in, and the series is run as long as it is, and we're still doing it. We're in the Great Ninja War for anyone who follows the series. And it shows no sign of stopping. So it feels like I'll be doing him for, I don't know, at least another 3 or 4 years, if not more.
Yeah. So Liam, you were saying there about Guerra and him being your long. Would he be your longest character, your longest career character?
Absolutely.
And I know I ask this all the time, and I don't think any voice actor or any really can choose. Can you choose your favorite character?
Well, it is now. I never have been able to answer this question, but playing Gollum has kind of trumped everything.
Yeah.
So Gollum is the favorite. I've just adored getting to step into his parachutes, his slippery skin. But after that, I have a handful that I know are my favorites. I love Guerra. I love Nightcrawler. Stormrage in the World of Warcraft
yes.
game. The pop favorites. I mean, I've done. All turned into a blur over the years, but those are probably the ones at the top. I liked their projects too. That I've loved being a voice director for Resident Evil. I'm very proud of what we accomplished for the cinematics and the vocal track for Resident Evil 6. I love being part of the Darksiders franchise because I'm a huge Joe Madureira fan.
Yeah.
I was as a kid, so that was one time where I walked in and didn't know much about. They didn't tell me what I was coming in for, really. And I walked in and met one of my favorite comic book artists ever, and just totally spazzed out. And now I'm friends with Joe, and it's great. It's been amazing for me. All of these stories and cartoons and shows and characters that I was in love with as a kid, I've started to join their ranks. It's really been trippy. And then there are actors too who I didn't know who they were when I was younger, in my teens or my 20s, and I was hearing people. I loved Cowboy Bebop when I was younger. Watched that whole series, and then to stand next to Steve, who is the center of that, and listen to him grumble Wolverine lines and then join him was a big honor for me. I love this industry. I love this industry every single day, even days when it is kicking my can and making me yell like a zombie on fire. I love it, and probably always will.
And it seems like it's very much a job and a career that a lot of people want to be a part of. And I know you are often asked, how can a person get into it? Because I know I asked you myself a couple of months back. Right. How do you feel when people ask you that? Do you want to give them the honest truth? Do you want to try and give them hope? Like what kind of offerings and advice?
There's hope for anyone. The key thing to know about it is that it is about acting. So yeah, there are a few people who are really good at doing impressions, and there's people who can duplicate, Nicolas Cage's voice, and the people in movies, and they get hired to replace little chunks here and there in movies. But even them, and especially the rest of the voice actors who work in the game industry and animation, and audiobook, and there's so many different categories. It's about being a good actor. So anyone who's interested in this, bottom line, has to figure out how to be an actor, whether that's finding a school that you can go to or finding theaters in your area and just starting. There's no right way to start. I didn't start going, okay, here I go. I'm going to be Gollum in a video game someday. I started studying how to be an actor, and then it was just by pure chance that I was in a play with Crispin Freeman, who you must be familiar with. He plays Itachi on Naruto, and a million other roles.
He does.
And we spent 2 months together, and I became good friends with him, and that led to an audition. So you have to be ready for that chance. So I would suggest don't just get into it to be a voice actor, because it's a tricky path to wind your way there on purpose. It can be done. I've seen people do it. But unless you're geared to act in any shape or form, then you won't be ready for that. Now, in addition to everything I just said, there are some simple things you got to do. One is you have to live where the work is. The majority of game voiceover is based out of Los Angeles. Not all of it. Some comes out of London, some comes out of New York, some's in Canada, a little bit in Texas, and then if you're interested in doing animation, mostly Los Angeles, a tiny bit in New York, a tiny bit in Canada, and then for anime, it used to be sort of evenly dispersed around the country in the United States, but most of it's in Texas now. A smaller but decent amount is in Los Angeles. I think occasionally something gets done in New York now, and occasionally something up in Canada. Also, anime is not going to pay your mortgage. I still love doing it, and it's what sort of sharpened my skills to the point where they're at now. If you can follow the Flap in an anime series and not make it sound like bad William Shatner acting, then you can do anything. So go to where the work is, and then you probably have to work on making a demo, get good advice, and I would listen to the demos of people who are working all the time, the kinds of careers you want to have. Go find their reel online. You can find it and see what they sound like. They're typically short, no more than a minute and a half tops. I mean, there are people who have longer ones, but speaking as someone who's cast voiceover, you listen to the first 30 seconds. So going past a minute and a half is just wasting energy. Is there anything else? And then there's some good info out there. D. Bradley Baker is a wonderful voice actor, and he's got a website with a whole section on it about this question, where he explores it in depth. And then Yuri Lowenthal,
his book.
His wife Tara Platt they have a book, Voiceover Voice Actor, and there's a lot of voiceover books out there. I bought one when I was 20 something, trying to figure out if I could start working in commercials, and those books that I saw when I was in my 20s, and I'm 38 now. Those books are still on the shelves. I wouldn't recommend getting those books. Voiceover Voice Actor is very recent, and I'm sure anyone who's listening to this interview between you and me is interested in games and animation.
Oh, very much so.
Yuri Lowenthal knows all about that, so that's the book. And then just pursue it if you love it. If you can do anything else, do it, because it's not like people throw buckets of money at you. Certainly not at the beginning. I did a lot of crazy side jobs while doing theater and doing a little bit of voiceover, and slowly the crazy weird jobs lessened as the voiceover grew, but it took a long time.
But I'd say the crazy weird jobs turned into the voiceover jobs. I mean, you've had some really amazing roles, like just touching on the Darksiders role. That really kind of exploded. I mean, that character and that world was just so interesting. I'm a personal huge fan of that series, and I'm one of the people that really hopes there's a third one to kind of, because it feels like it needs to be a trilogy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, at least. And I think there's good rumor on the wind right now that the people who scooped up the franchise are working on it to some extent. I mean, I'm not gonna.
Yeah, of course.
Hold my breath, but I think something's happening, so that's good.
And of course, the animation was just like we said it there. Joe Madara he's just one of a kind, I think.
He certainly is, and so many games. For a long time, I think we're seeing a little more color. At this E3, I felt like I was seeing more color palette in games, but games over the last 5 years have sort of suffered from this dingy gray-brown gunmetal.
That's what happens when you have an apocalypse kind of thing people are having.
Conformity, and Darksiders was such a breath of fresh air. I mean, it was so vibrant. Just the animation is great, but then it wasn't. It was an apocalypse, but it wasn't everything dark gray ash and
that's what the Naruto games are so great for. They're so big and so bold and so energetic. I mean, you feel the energy when you're playing those games. So, Liam, what's it been like the fans now? Like you said, you've been doing this for 15 years. What's it like meeting the fans? Like, I understand you were here in Ireland a couple years ago. What's it been like, meeting your fans?
I wish I could do it more. I don't go to as many conventions as some of my friends do, but I love to. I mean, we spend so much time. It's funny, we live in Los Angeles, but I don't see the sun for much of the day, so we're in these dark little rooms that are like velvet-lined coffins, essentially.
Yeah, that's what everyone says that.
We're in a shoebox, just sort of talking into a can, and then it gets taken away, and so it's nice to meet people who are thrilled by the art that the game industry is making and that we're making. And it's funny that I loved coming to the convention in Ireland. What I loved about it was that it looked like any other convention I'd ever been to in New York or California or anywhere. People in cosplay. If I had my fingers stuffed in my ears, I could have very easily have been in Kansas. But if I pull my fingers out, I hear your accent, and it was very charming. I will come back in a heartbeat. Anyone who runs a convention in Ireland, a heartbeat.
I will be careful where you say that now. A lot of people definitely want to see you back on our turf, especially after Steve Blum last year.
I'm ready. I'm fucking ready.
So, listen, Liam, it's been an absolute pleasure interviewing you. I know it's been on my bucket list for interviews for a while now. I was hoping, we have a saying here, the Geek Bites Back. Would you say it in your Nightcrawler voice, please?
Sure. The Geek Bites Back.
Liam O'Brien, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much.